Hi everyone and welcome to the next Grad Cracker webinar with Severn Trent. Running water and a flushing toilet is something that we all take for granted, but how does water get to you and how can we sustain this resource for the future? Today, Severn Trent is going to tell us how. Grad Cracker has a long history with Severn Trent and Jessica and I visited their HQ in Coventry many a times and met Darren nearly weekly, haven't we, Darren, before over the years? Sometimes Darren is the first person I speak to in the morning at 8 o'clock on our 8 o'clock calls. So we've got long history with Grad Cracker. I've looked after Severn Trent now for around 7 years. They sponsor the utilities sector in the Grad Cracker toolkit, and their hub is filled with lots of interesting content, so including some fascinating employee profiles and videos. So it's well worth a look. I'd really like to get across to you today how interesting the water industry is and why you should consider this sector to apply to. The webinar today is a little different, so we're joined by two grads, Rose and Max. I'd like to thank Rose because she's actually on leave this week, so she's coming especially for this webinar, so thanks for that, Rose. And Brian, who is currently on a placement with Severn Trent. All of the students here and grads found their roles and jobs on Grad Cracker, so really good note to say. We're also joined by Darren, who heads up the recruitment team, and Justin, who looks after the Severn Trent Academy. So Justin's going to give us a little bit more of a different take on training and development and everything else at Severn Trent. So let's start by meeting the graduates and, of course, Brian. I'm going to start with you, Rose. If you could tell everybody about which university you went to and what did you study?
Yeah, sure. So I went to Sheffield University and I studied a 4-year Masters in Physics and Astrophysics.
Perfect. Thank you, Rose. Max, over to you.
Yeah, so I studied at University of Leeds and I did chemical engineering and an integrated Masters as well, yeah.
Fantastic. So 2 Yorkshire universities, which is good in my world. And come on, Darren, you have to support the Yorkshire. And Brian, last but not least, you're currently still at university, but which university are you at?
So I'm currently at Oxford Brookes University and I'm studying the Mechanical Engineering Bachelor's Programme.
Fantastic.
And after this year, I'm going to go back to finish my 3rd year.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, Brian. We're going to get to know a little bit more about Max, Rose and Brian a little bit later on. Rose, I'm going to start with you. So I've just briefly mentioned about Severn Trent and who you are, but could you describe who Severn Trent is and the selling points around the company?
Yeah, sure. So Severn Trent, we're based in Coventry, as you already said. So we serve customers in the Midlands and also parts of Wales. And we serve approximately 8 million customers. We treat clean water and safely distribute it to our customers, and then we safely take that water away again and treat it, the wastewater that comes from that. As well as that, we also generate a lot of renewable energy. So by 2030, we'll generate 100% of the energy that we use. And we're a very environmentally conscious company and are doing a lot in that space as well. So really interesting company to work for.
Thank you, Rose. And I think the guys are going to speak a little bit later on about their initial attraction to Severn Trent was all about the sustainability and renewable aspects of the business. So for now, what I'm going to do is hand over to Darren. So Darren, the Severn Trent has still got 3 graduate opportunities, graduate programmes open to applications. Could you give the audience a bit of an idea about these different opportunities, what they're called, and an overview of what they are?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. My role at Severn Trent is within the new talent team, and I'm responsible for sort of attracting and selecting as well. So design those selection processes for our programs. For 2021 entry, we have 3 graduate programs on offer at the moment, and those opportunities will close on Sunday, the 21st of March. I'll quickly just give you a very, very high level summary of what those programs include. So if we start off with, from a STEM perspective and technology, we have a digital engineering program. So these opportunities will provide 3 different placements that allows individuals that they will need to have that interest within tech, and particularly the focus will be on .NET, Java, C++, so kind of architectural kind of either developer careers or coding, depending on what that interests are. So we're not going to kind of pigeonhole you into a specific role. It really is, well, what comes out with those 3 placements whilst you're on that 2-year program, the development that you'll go through, the exposure to different areas of technology within that architectural world and digital engineering, and then you'll be able to scope out what is sort of right for you and what your interests are. So that's one program. We also have on the Employer Hub, we have details of a finance program. So not specifically engineering, for example, here, and you'll be hearing from the guys later on. But this is 4 placements across 3 years that will take people down either the ACCA professional qualification route or the CIMA route. So 2 different professional qualification routes to go into a career within finance. And then also we have our business leadership program. Now this is where we will get candidates from across all disciplines, and it will include some engineers as well. And this program, you'll hear more from Rose actually later about her experiences, but this program provides 3 9-month placements where you'll get exposure to customers, and Rose has just mentioned, you know, there's kind of 8 million of those. So we provide placements that gives you exposure to leading and being in a customer sort of role. Also from a commercial angle as well, sort of understanding how our business operates and commercially, being involved in projects as well, and then also leading in teams. So there's kind of key pillars that you would sort of complete during those 9-month placements across the kind of 2 years just over, before then going into a substantive post that you will carve out yourself through those experiences and networks that you'll build up during that time. So those are the 3 programs that we have for on open at the moment, that for 2021 entry will be September, and closing dates for those applications are a week on Sunday, 21st of March.
Perfect. Very well done, Darren. Couldn't beat that one. So don't forget to go and get your applications in. Obviously mention the fact to Darren that you've watched this webinar. He'll really be looking out for those bits and pieces as well. The hub there's plenty of information on there that you can really go on and thoroughly do your research. So another question for you, Darren, the application process, what is that looking like this year? What can students expect?
We've revamped it. The water industry works in cycles, so sort of 5-year block periods of work, and a little bit of research for you all. We're regulated, so Ofwat is the regulator, looks after those 8 million customers within our region, and we've gone into a new kind of 5-year period, which we would call an AMP, so that sort of asset management period of work. Now we're looking into that new AMP and what the skills are required within not only Severn Trent, but within our industry, innovation, technology, and therefore where we were maybe 3 years ago is completely different to what the business needs in the future, in the coming years. So we've worked with colleagues from those that are on programme all the way through to board members in terms of, okay, what is it that people are currently doing? What are the skills that the business needs as we go into that 5-year period? And what's come out of that is a number of different strengths that we would look for in a candidate. But your first sort of port of call is to have a look at some of that content on the Employer Hub, do that passive research by looking at the video content, for example, follow us on social media. There's lots of different experiences that people will, from different programs that people will be sharing. But the thing that should be important to you is, well, the culture of an organisation that we wish to pursue. That's really important. You're going to be spending a lot of time, you know, at work over the duration of your career. So it's important that you get it right. So once you've done that and you've decided, yeah, okay, is this program I'm looking to go into, go via the Employer Hub. That will take you to the Severn Trent website and you'll be able to apply. And we have a very clear yeah, I would say, let's call it a very clear process that allows you to articulate your reasons why in an application form, but there's a lot of bio data that you're going to provide us as well. We don't reject anybody. Rejection is the wrong word, right? Let's call it, we don't not allow a candidate to go on to those online assessment stages. It's important that all candidates get that opportunity to do so. So we don't have an academic criteria and we focus on those strengths. So you are introduced to the world of or 3 different areas of the business. Leakage is one, and we have targets we need to meet there. So it's a really good introduction to that part of the business. We also have green power as well, and bioresources. So very sort of topical sort of areas of the business that are crucially important to us as an organisation, our success. And you'll do some case studies online, lots of video to help guide you through that before you start. And also, I would also add that you'll be introduced to our culture and the values that we all have as employees, and there's video content there. Once you get through that, then we'll go through into numerical reasoning, which is time recorded, not time limited, so that we get a real good understanding of how you are able to sort of work with complex data. Excuse me. And then finally, hopefully, we'll invite you to a final assessment centre that will consist of Zoom meeting, presentation and interview.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Darren. So from your point of view, Justin, I'm going to move on to you now. Darren takes a big glug of a cup of tea. So that's fine. So obviously, when we've spoken to the panel before, recruiting early talent, young talent is really important to Severn Trent. Now, why is that? Why is recruiting students and graduates so important to you as a business?
Yeah, thanks, Carla. It's massively important. I always find it fascinating if you get a group of Severn Trent people together and ask them kind of how long they've been at Severn Trent, you'll be amazed by kind of the length of service. It's 10, 15, 20 years. Now, that's fantastic. It shows what a great place it is to work. But what it does mean is we can easily get into kind of habits. It does mean that parts of our workforce are aging. And therefore, we need to get that new talent in. We need to get that diversity of thought. We need to get people that come in and going to challenge the way we do things and ask us why we're doing it, and explore whether there's a different way of doing it. And people that come in from different backgrounds, different education, that will kind of bring new ideas in for us and help us kind of get better and continuously improve the way we do things.
Yeah. And I think just going back to what Darren said as well about the people that they would recruit. So it's every STEM discipline from every university, and that's what basically Justin's just said. They are looking for that diversity of thought, which hopefully you'll get from the grads and Brian today. And just to finish with you, Justin, before we move on to actually meet everybody else, you head up the Severn Trent Academy. Can you tell us a little bit more about this and how the graduates will join the academy when they start at Severn Trent?
Yeah. I mean, I could easily spend the rest of the afternoon talking about this. There's so much to talk about. So in a broad sense, the academy is how we develop people within Severn Trent, and that's everybody in our organisation. But we have just invested £10 million in a brand new academy building that's dedicated to learning. And that opened last month. So it's literally just opened its doors. We're already doing some training in it, but with COVID restrictions, we're a little bit limited. But as soon as restrictions open, we're going to have that building absolutely packed out with people learning and developing. And the great thing about that is that we're doing much more experiential learning. So not moving away from kind of classroom, but getting into kind of really hands-on, the practical skills that you can use every day. We've got operational rigs that we can use. We've got virtual reality. We're kind of starting to kind of film and practice the way we do things. So it's a really diverse way of working. And then for me, I look after, within our academy, I'll have to look after a couple of bits. I look after our professional development, which is how do we support people to go on to those kind of professional roles with the engineering bodies like IMechE or ICE and get to charter status. And then I look after business skills as well, which is all around kind of the personal effectiveness, things like influencing, communication skills. And interestingly, we're just in the process now of kind of refreshing our graduate development program. And putting in place all the things that we're going to do to support the graduates through kind of their couple of years on program and learn a lot of those kind of business skills that are really going to help them develop as they join us.
Yeah, brilliant. And how does it work, Justin, from the grads' point of view? So is all their training structured, or can they ask for training that they might think, oh, this is a bit of a weak area, so presentation skills or something like that? Can they ask to receive this training? How does it, or is it a bit of a mix of both?
It's absolutely a mix of both. And we really recognise that kind of everybody's unique and everybody's going to have different needs and different strengths. So there is a structured programme that you'll go through as a cohort. some way together. But we've got a lovely system that we call Learn Anytime, which is online learning.
Yeah.
And you can go, and all of our graduates have access to that. And that's something where you can go in your own time, different kind of content, some of it video, some of it infographics, some of it kind of exercises you can work through. And you can work through that at your own pace. You can choose the subjects that you want to do. And then we also have a range of different kind of learning and courses as well, where through discussions with your line manager around kind of your development needs, you can identify other things that you can kind of get yourself on and do as well. So a real range from structured to self-directed.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tristan. I really like the way as well that it's not just, you know, your classroom or your virtual learning on a computer. You know, you do get that hands-on experience as well. And I think sometimes when you start a company, you can't necessarily go out and, you know, work on a project straight away, but that hands-on training will give everybody a head start. So yeah, thank you very much, Justin and Darren. And I think now we're going to meet Max and Brian.
Yeah, I'd like to find out a bit more about what initially attracted you guys to apply to Severn Trent. So Max and Brian, I know we kind of touched upon it briefly right at the beginning, Carla, but what initially attracted you guys to, you know, the ethics and, you know, why was the sustainability, renewable side of Severn Trent such a pull for you both? So Max, maybe start with you.
Yeah, so hilariously, I didn't know hardly. I've actually lived in the Midlands for quite a long time of my life, and I didn't really know anything about Severn Trent. But my degree, we did a lot of colloidal sciences, and it was something I quite excelled at. So I knew I wanted to go sort of into the water industry to continue that. And then once you start looking into actually waste treatment in particular and its effect on the environment, it becomes very, very interesting and also very impactful. So for those who don't know, we have discharge permits on our sewage treatment works that we have to meet, and certainly with the work that we're doing this cycle, as Darren's talked about before, there's a big push for biodiversity, using less chemical, using less energy, you know, using less pumps, everything like this. So we're being as environmentally friendly as we can. And as an engineer, that's obviously a really exciting sort of prospect to be part of, because if you imagine, if you have an unlimited budget and you don't have to meet any permits, you could build something that, you know, is absolutely amazing. Doesn't mean it's amazing for environment. It doesn't mean you're optimizing your engineering solution. And for me, the reason why I wanted to be an engineer was to go through that logical thought process of problem solving, etc., and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, when you get into it, that's what's really interesting. Having those constraints from the regulator, very interesting. You know, it's not a privately owned company. We can't do what we want, and that, if you're the sort of person who likes to overcome challenges in an interesting way, it's definitely a place to be.
How does that work, Max, with the regulator then? So if you you know, if you design a new system or you want to put something in place, do you have to go to the regulator to sign things off? I mean, how does it all work? Yeah,
so it's a bit of an interesting process actually. So particularly for the waste, it's more about the river qualities that we're improving, or the water bodies that we're improving. And so what will happen is what we'll actually do is we'll look at all the sewage treatment works that feed into that one water body, and the Environment Agency will say, right, that river has to have X amount of stuff into it. So then we go, well, here we're going to have to spend loads of money to do that. Whereas if we do look at these other two sites and maybe improve those a bit more, that's going to be cheaper. So it's really, it's not just looking at like sort of one. It's going whole picture, start to divide it. And this is where sort of those skills as an engineer, we've actually got to start thinking about money and strategy really coming as well. It's not just chucking a pump.
yeah, there's a lot more to it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Max, I'm going to kind of move on to you and ask you a similar question, but sorry, I said Max, I meant to say sorry, Max. Brian, I actually want to give you a bit of a shout out, because I spoke to Andy, your placement officer at your university earlier this week, to say that you were on the presentation. He was so excited that you were featured on this webinar today. So just a bit of a shout out to Andy, because I know he's watching and he's really proud of you that you're here today. So well done.
Thanks, Andy.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Well done, Brian.
Yeah, same kind of question to you, Brian, and yeah, what initially attracted you to Severn Trent?
So for me, growing up, I've always been, you know, vaguely aware of sustainability and, with recycling and stuff. But what really got me interested was when I watched a documentary on, I think it was Netflix, Blue Planet, narrated by David Attenborough. And there was a really sad scene where the seals were just, dying. So that one, and with modules in university on sustainability, that really got me interested. So when I was researching the companies for my placement, sustainability was definitely a key factor.
Yeah.
And Severn Trent stood up for me because of their commitment to improving biodiversity and reducing emissions.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, I think we're committed to planting, 1.3 million trees by 2027. And we already use more than 50%, generate 50% of our energy through renewable sources.
Mm-hmm.
And also aside from that, Severn Trent's moving towards 100% renewable energy and an entirely electric fleet by 2030. So I think if sustainability is something that you consider when you look at a company, then Severn Trent definitely passes the bar and more.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. Just a bit of a side note to that. So Severn Trent on their company hub on GradCracker has a page all about the environment and how they're building a lasting legacy towards this. So yeah, make sure you go have a good look through that as well, because there's a lot of information on that and what you guys are all doing to achieve that. So well done.
Jess, I thought what Brian was going to say a couple of years ago, I can't remember what channel it was on, Darren, but there was a documentary about Severn Trent. It was either on BBC or Channel 4. And it followed some of the guys at Severn Trent around, and it was absolutely brilliant. Just the stuff that they get involved in, and then you just think, you do take it for granted that you just turn on your tap, there's water there, toilet flushes and everything else. And honestly, the things that the guys do is brilliant. So I was intrigued.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Morbid on the session is sewage. But sorry, Jess, I was interrupting you.
No, it's fine. That was interesting. Oh, I'll have to dig that out. I wonder if it's on
really good.
Quite good. If we maybe should link to it on the hub,
Yeah, we can put that on there.
We'll have to have a look.
Find it. I'll write a note.
Make a note. We'll have a meeting after. We'll have a chat. So what I was going to say was, what we are noticing actually is that as part of these webinars, that STEM students that love to study a technical subject, but some we've started to notice that are quite keen to kind of move their skills and transfer their skills to maybe more of a generalist career. So Rose, that's kind of one thing that happened with you. So can you tell the audience a bit more about kind of your career and your transition to that kind of role that you're in now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned earlier, so I studied physics and astrophysics at uni, and very technical subject. And I think I went into that thinking, the world's my oyster, I can go and do anything. But actually my experience of looking for graduate roles was quite limited, and a lot of graduate recruiters wanted engineers, not physicists. And so I started a PhD in aerospace engineering, a Rolls-Royce sponsored one. It was interesting, but it just wasn't for me at all. I found it quite isolating, and I just felt like actually that specialist technical route wasn't right for me. So at that point I decided to start looking at graduate schemes, and that's where Severn Trent was really that happy medium of still getting that sort of technical kick, if you know what I mean. So you could still go into scientific related roles or something where you're using those skills from your degree, analytical skills, but then equally develop your leadership skills and develop a broad range of skills that I wouldn't have been able to get whilst going down that technical career path through a PhD. So for me, it was a really good balance, and and I haven't looked back since. I've really, that's one decision where at the time I was thinking, I might regret this for the rest of my life, and my friends are going to help be called doctors and I'm not. But actually, it was absolutely the right decision, and I've gained loads from coming to Severn Trent and the sort of skills and training that I've developed through that.
And I hope that, even with what you said in terms of inspiring people to really think outside the box, you don't necessarily, when you are hunting for jobs, when you are looking on GradCracker, you will notice, and I say it all the time when I'm speaking to students, you might search physics, but look at all the different industries that you can work in. Look at all the different companies out there that would accept your degree discipline, whether it, finance, or Severn Trent, whoever, lots of different routes there that you can go into. So I always say this is a really exciting time for students, if it was me, to start to discover, where can I end up. So it's great. That's kind of like what you did, and not looking back is a lovely thing to think, isn't it? So next, I want to talk to you all about your roles and kind of what that entails at the moment, and I want to know a bit more about the teams that you work in. So Rose, you are now an innovation manager, is that right?
Yeah,
so
that's right.
Tell me a bit more about what you do and like the team that you work in and how it's all looking at the moment.
Yeah, sure. So it's a really interesting part of the business. There's always lots going on, lots of variety. So I suppose what we do as a core is we take ideas either from within the business that people have come up with, or ideas that suppliers have come to us with, and we trial those ideas and see if we can get them to work. And if they're successful, and they either save our customers money, or we do something in a more efficient or more environmentally friendly way, then we choose to then roll that out across the business and demonstrate the benefits from that. So it's a really interesting place to be. And day to day, it can involve anything from being on calls with all of the water companies to help set strategy on innovation, to going out on site and understanding how a process works, to things like putting in patent applications for example, one of our graduates had a really good idea, so we've got that patented now, and we'll go and sell that. So yeah, really interesting place to be in the business.
That's amazing. That was going to be one of my questions, actually. Do you guys talk with other companies? Because, you might come up with a great idea which, might maybe not fit the environment that we live in, but maybe could fit a different country or suit someone else's needs. Do you kind of have those networks where you do talk to different companies and kind of share ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. So part of my role is being a part of the World Water Innovation Fund. So that's a network of 12 water companies across the world, and it's growing as well. So there'll be more companies joining. So we might be talking to Singapore or Australia or different places around the world and learning about their technologies, or equally sharing our learning with them. It means that you're sometimes on phone calls in your pajamas at sort of 10 o'clock at night, but it's really interesting, really great to meet them and understand. A lot of their challenges are the same as ours, but also that it's quite different as well. So Australia, for example, obviously heavy periods of drought there, so we can just learn so much from them about saving water.
Yeah,
so yeah, lots to learn.
It's great to tap into that knowledge. I think it's important that we do that. Going back to that whole idea of sustainability and making sure we're getting the most out of everything. Max, moving on to you, design engineer. Tell me more.
Yeah, sounds way more exciting than it is, clearly. But so I'm currently a design engineer with a specialism in processing chemicals. So as Darren's talked about, we've got this huge capital schemes that we have to deliver over the cycle of 5 years. So again, regulator sets what we need to do in order to provide the effluent quality out of our sewage treatment works. We're given a bunch of money, and my department really does a lot of the work of that. So a previous team I was in, for those chemical engineers who may be watching, sort of is process engineering. So they sort of come up with some options, and then what my team will do is we'll cost those options, and then we'll make a reasonable sort of judgment on what's the best cost benefit analysis. So again, it comes back to what's the best solution for our customers in terms of capital spend. And then we'll design that. So again, for the chemical engineers in the room, mass balances, piping instrumentation diagrams, doing control philosophies, all this sort of stuff is my specialism. But for other people, such as mechanical and civil engineers, there's obviously the concrete side. I say concrete side, but the structural side for the civil engineers. Sometimes we just say we just deal with concrete, but we don't deal with other stuff. And the mechanical engineers working out pumps, pump selection, static heads, all that sort of stuff. So it's really interesting. I think for those who are at uni and sort of are stuck in a theoretical world, it's when you come out, it's a lot different, because you can't just decide what you want to do. So I always think that the best example of this is one of the most interesting things about being a design engineer is not designing the actual assets, is actually finding badges on site and realise you can't build half the pipes you want to build where they want, or there's bats in a protected bat species in the building. So a lot more interesting issues like that you'd think. But so that's basically the job. It's very sort of more technical engineering, and it's only something that's sort of recently come around. So before, a lot of this work was contracted out, so we're bringing this back in house. So it's quite an exciting time, because it's kind of a new department really, which has its own challenges, but it's also very, it's benefits as well. So
Fantastic, brilliant. Thanks, Max. Brian, moving on to you. If you could tell me a bit about, obviously, you're in the water treatment design team, I believe. So tell
Yes.
me more about that.
So my team consists of, myself and 2 design engineers, like Max, and we do have to deal with those badges at times, but it's quite interesting. So as the core design team, we sort of we deal with a lot of most projects that relates to boreholes, like capital maintenance or turbidity mitigation. So as the design team, we take the projects through the initial stages of the design and delivery process. So we compile all the relevant data, we come up with different options, and we sort of set the design parameters. And for me personally, being in a relatively small and intimate team, I think I've been able to take on a lot of responsibility, especially for someone with my level of experience. So far in the design team, I've worked on different contractual documents and engineering drawings, and I've helped with cost evaluations and coordinating with contractors to undertake surveys at different sites. So a lot of experience, opportunity for me to learn and develop as a person, and as an engineer.
I'm going to go off topic slightly, Brian, with you, because again, speaking to so many students at the moment that are thinking about going out and applying for placements.
Sure.
If I could ask you, what do you think the biggest benefit so far being in industry with Severn Trent has been to you as a person, as an individual? What would you say it's been?
I think it really gives you an opportunity to evaluate if this is what you want to do. Like Max said earlier, what you do in university is most likely very, very different to what you would do in industry. So engineers all do maths at uni, a lot of integration and stuff, but in industry, the likelihood of you doing that 24/7 or every day is a lot lower. And I think for me, I think this year's experience, I've learned a lot of stuff here already that you can never learn in university. So I would definitely encourage, if anyone's interested, to look into it.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I think that Brian just hit the nail on the head there. So with the placements that you decide to do, if you decide to do a placement every summer whilst you're at university, for example, you can go and experience 3, maybe 4 different industries. So you might not like one. We might have had your heart set, like Rose mentioned before, in doing something in the for example, the aerospace industry, not quite right. Okay, so what else can I do? And it's definitely worth doing a placement. So yeah, thanks for that, Brian. Really good insight. Where I think I'd like to move next is the training that you've all been given. And I mean, Justin before mentioned about how important training is, obviously, to the individuals and to Severn Trent as a company. And what I'd like to know now from you all is about the training that you've received so far, and also the future development activities that you're considering in taking at Severn Trent. So Rose, if we could start with you.
Yeah, sure. So I think, as Justin mentioned earlier, there's a huge variety of training at Severn Trent, and some of it's formal throughout your graduate programme, and some of it's additional that you can request. And so for me, there's been quite a lot to remember now, but it's all been really good. So I think a shout out to Justin as well, because he's delivered some of my training. So that's been really good. I have to say that because he's on the call, but no, genuinely. So there's the business leadership course that we did probably about 18 months ago for our sort of middle management leaders, and it's almost like an MBA in a week. It's really good. It's quite intense, but really good, and really good for connecting with other leaders in the business as well, and learning from experience that they've had. So that was really good. Things like presentation training, which I absolutely loved. One of the best pieces of training I've had was presentation training, and learned a lot from that. And also we've got things like, for example, when I've had more technical roles, so when I was out dealing with contractors in the road and digging up the roads, NERSWA qualification, which is specific for supervising people out in the road and doing that activity. So loads of technical training that's specific to your role as well. So you're always confident that you've got the health and safety element, and also the technical ability to be able to challenge or to give advice as well when you're in that role. So yeah, really, really good range of training and support.
I think the more training that you have, and I think people underestimate training because the more training that you have, then the more confidence you have. So when you've just mentioned was about, you know, being out there speaking to people about health and safety and everything else, you know, all of that training and your presentation skills and your communication skills, I bet that gave you a lot more confidence just to say to somebody who, you know, might not have been doing the right thing in the right place, right, no, that's not right. So I think training really bolsters everything about you as an individual. So thanks, Rose. Brian, I'm going to go on to you now. What training have you had?
So I think the first bit of training I've had at Severn Trent was the e-learning. It's still fresh in my memory because I only started 7 months ago. So that covers stuff like interesting stuff like modern slavery, energy management, and environmental management. And apart from that, I've undertaken the National Water Hygiene course, which allows me to work and go to different clean water sites. So that has been very useful. I've also received CDM training, which stands for Construction Design and Management. And for those of you who don't know what CDM is, it's sort of the main regulations when it comes to health and safety and construction, any construction work. So it's very useful for me, you know, to learn about something that can be applied across, you know, many fields of engineering.
Yeah.
And looking ahead, I will be doing a pump training course next week. So that will cover, you know, like Max said earlier, how to calculate the heads, the static pressure, how to design pump systems as well. So that will tie in quite nicely with my university dissertation as well. Yeah.
And I'm guessing as well, Brian, if you decided to go back to Severn Trent as a graduate, you know, all this training will come in handy for, you know, your future career as well. Yeah,
I think definitely gives you a head start.
Yeah.
If you're already familiar with the top topic and the subject already, I think it can definitely give you an advantage.
Perfect. Thanks, Brian. Max, I was going to call you Maxwell because we've got a Max at work and I call him Maxwell. So sorry, Max.
Yeah, so I'm similar to Rose. Had a lot of these sort of softer skill training, so which is fantastic. They have a really good course. So if you're in a manager role, they give you what's called awesome leadership training. I don't know if that's changed now, but it's something similar. But it's absolutely brilliant. Sort of gives you the tools to manage. Kind of to put maybe just a bit of an engineering spirit on it as well. So for me, I've done IOS training, which is a recognised health and safety qualification. There's also managing contractors training that I've done, which again is a recognised qualification. And then I've also done HAZOP training to be a HAZOP chair. So again, for the process engineers out of you who are looking for chartership experience and stuff like that, you can't get better than that. That sort of ticks off the whole health and safety part of the report for you. So it's the training's there. In fact, I'm actually the training for pumps that Brian's having next week. I'm doing it today. I've just taken the hour out just to go and do this. So if that's not a show of how hot we are in training, I don't know what it is.
Thanks, Max. Justin, did you have anything else that you wanted to add? I know we touched on training earlier on, but I wanted to give you, chance to add anything if you wanted to.
Yeah, I've obviously got to say thanks to Rose for her glowing endorsement, but I think a couple of things. I think everybody in our organisation, we encourage them to have a personal development plan and have regular conversations with their manager around their development and what training they need. So that's part of everything we do. The guys have already mentioned it, but we definitely focusing on what are the skills you need for your role and ensuring and make sure everybody's got absolutely the skills they need for their role. But we really encourage people to move around the organisation and we'll take gambles on people. So I moved from working in procurement to working in learning and development. Now, I never had any kind of training skills, learning skills. I had some transferable skills which enabled me to get the job, but then I got the training I needed to become a proficient in learning and development.
Yeah.
And so we really encourage people. We don't kind of pigeonhole people. We look at who you are as an individual and then say, how can we support you to do the role that you're doing?
Yeah. I love that. I love it. You know, even if everybody's happy with what they're doing at the moment, their current role, you know, in the future, I think, well, actually, I wouldn't mind having a go at doing something a little bit different. So I love the way that at Severn Trent, you do have the scope to move around the business as well. I do think that's important, especially with the graduates, you know, being so young as well. If you think, oh, I'm going to be in this role now for the next, you know, 10, 20 years, like you mentioned before, just that people tend to stay at Severn Trent when they start there. I think, you know, the option to move around is a real selling point. So thank you, Justin.
And next I want to move on to projects. So I want to know the various projects that you've worked on, and maybe maybe what's your favourite one? What's the favourite project you've worked on so far? Rose, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, sure. So actually, probably one of the most interesting things is something I've just finished working on. So this time last year, I started working with representatives from all the water companies in the UK, and we pulled together an innovation strategy for the whole of the water sector up until 2050. So that was a really interesting experience, talking to all these different innovation managers and what their challenges are, and how it differs to ours, and understanding how we can really collaborate together and actually make a difference and really drive change for the sector. I think it's something that we've always wanted to do, but we probably just haven't forced ourselves and got our heads together to go and do it. So it's a really interesting time, and Ofwat, our regulator, have just launched an Ofwat Innovation Fund, which is £200 million that water companies can apply for to kick off innovation projects and run innovation projects. And that strategy has been a big part of that. So how we can work together, how we can develop bids together for this fund, and really drive true collaboration. So yeah, really interesting project. Lots of challenges as well, lots of different opinions, and trying to understand, you know, what's a priority and what's not. But it's been really interesting and really useful. Yeah.
Brilliant. Just a question then, could anyone kind of get involved in these particular projects, you know, these kind of innovation projects? You know, someone, you know, even say Brian, if he had an idea, could he get involved in that kind of process as well? Or is it just who's ever working that particular team?
Yeah, definitely. So we're always interested to hearing ideas from others, whether that's from universities or from industry. And on our website, actually, there's a form you can fill out if you've got an idea. So I think it's Severn Trent /innovation. We've got a form there that you can fill out, and it also gives you an idea of the different needs that we're focused on at the moment, trying to solve. So yeah, that's probably a really good starting point.
Just out of curiosity, if you know, what would you say the biggest need is at the moment, would you say, in the water industry?
Biggest need, well, leakage is always a big one. I think if you've got anything that can help solve leakage or help reduce our leakage or detect leaks, then we're always interested. So yeah, that's probably one of our top priorities right now.
Brilliant. Brian, how about you? Any exciting projects you worked on so far?
Yes, but I'm afraid my project is not going to be as interesting as Rose's, but I'll give it a crack. So I think the project I've enjoyed most so far is a borehole capital maintenance project at a site called Milford. This is like the first project that I've really been involved with from the early stages of the project. So it's just been really like satisfying to see how well we've progressed. At the start of the project, we had like limited information, and we identified quite a few constraints, be it environmental or operational. But you know, halfway through the design phase now, we know how to mitigate and overcome those obstacles, and we've got a pretty good idea on how to secure the water we need. And for me personally, like I said, it was the first time, you know, that I've been involved with the project fully. So it's been a very good learning experience for me, you know, completing a lot of unfamiliar work, and yeah, learning from the great guys on my team.
Brilliant. Would you say you were given quite a lot of responsibility quite early on then? You know, do you feel as though you played a kind of a big part in the team?
Yeah, I think I've I think I've involved myself in different meetings, and I've asked a lot of questions, hopefully not making a fool of myself. But yeah, I think I've been able to learn quite a lot, and then come to grips with quite a lot of stuff quite early on. So yeah.
Well done, you. Max, how about you?
So I don't really have a favourite project, and the project I'm going to talk about is, I believe, probably going to lead to my early male pattern baldness going on. It's a really difficult one. But the reason why I would call it my favourite is because it's probably one of the ones I've learned the most on. So it's basically one of these sites where we've had flooding in the catchment for ages. So it's been a historic problem. We've got a caravan site that, you know, sort of gives us flows at different times of the year. It's not been dealt with, and we thought we had this really good idea of a whole brand new site to sort all these problems out, and it just hasn't. It's just an incredibly complex project. We've got the sort of what we call the infrastructure, so the infra side of things, which is sort of all the pipes leading up until the sewage treatment works, and they're pumping a huge amount of flow into our works, and we can't take that flow, so we have to manage that flow of the works, which is very, very difficult because there's only so much you can feed to the works, and because of the process and the sort of bacteria we use for some of the process, you can't overfeed them, you can't starve them. There's badgers everywhere on site. It's just absolutely horrendous. But the reason why we call it my favorite project, I guess, is because as a in terms of development, these are where you know, if you're looking for a long-term career as a technical expert, this is where you cut your teeth. And having those experiences where you don't have much money left in your budget, you've got 7 things to sort out, the contractors are doing one thing, and it's just a whole mess. That's when you gain, you know, your best skills. You know, it's like steel tempered in fire, I guess it's kind of the example. But yeah, that's my favourite one, I guess.
Wow. Yeah, I think and you know, being quite strong-minded, like you say, not kind of turn into a nervous wreck and going into the corner and crying. So it's quite good that, you know, that you've kind of obviously well strong-minded and you can, you know, focus on the job in hand. I think I'll be crying about badgers, I'll be worrying about leaks. It'll be a nightmare.
I just imagine Max in a corner crying. I don't think that's going to happen.
It's good though, obviously, you know, in the team that you're working in, obviously it's very responsible and you've got a big task ahead.
Yeah, and I think it's probably not that I'm trying to sell engineering in Severn Trent completely, but it is for those who want maybe there obviously is specialism to my job, but there's also a lot of what we call generic engineering and generic problem solving and getting a holistic approach. So not that I'm trying to sell it, but for those who are thinking, oh, that's kind of where I'd like to be, because we are a client organisation, we're not a contractor organisation, so those are things we have to deal with. It's definitely the place to be.
Brilliant. So next I kind of want to talk about the future and what is in store and where you can see your careers going with Severn Trent. So Max, I know you kind of touched upon Chartership, or I think Rose, I don't know if it was you that mentioned it as well, about Chartership and you know, that obviously Severn Trent can offer that support and help. And can you tell us a bit why it's so important to you and how you're on track to achieve that? And that's to Max.
Cool. So yeah, for any of the engineering disciplines, we all have different paths to Chartership. I think they've just changed it, but it's probably the simplest one, which is just a report. The reason why, for me, it's important is basically the great thing about Severn Trent is you can have a career break, and I think Rose has an experience of this, so she might touch on as well. But one of the things I really want to do is go and work abroad, and certainly helping build water infrastructure elsewhere. And you can take a career break at Severn Trent and do whatever you want, and they'll hold your job for you. And being a chartered engineer means you're going to add a lot more benefits. So actually, one of my friends, she joined a project where I say friends, I mean friend at Severn Trent, who's a civil engineer, and she went over to Africa to help build their infrastructure. So for me, getting that technical expertise allows me to put myself in the best possible position to go and do that. And certainly for those who are chemical engineers, I guess Brian could probably talk about mechanical engineering more. Water industry is a really good place to get chartered. As I've already said about HAZOPs, mass balances, pipe and instrumentation diagrams, all these things that the ICAM you look at, you'll be able to tick off really easily. So yeah, that's why it's important. And I know that I'm saying a lot of positives there, which is obviously a good thing.
Max, some of the audience might not know about how the process of Chartership works. So could you kind of explain to anyone that maybe doesn't know how the process works, please?
Yeah, so for the ICME, what you have to do is assuming that you have got a master's. So if you don't have a master's, you have to do basically like a research project. Well, it's basically a report of something you've designed, etc. But the other half is a competency and commitment report, and that will basically touch on all the main competencies and commitments that they would expect from a chartered engineer. So stuff like health and safety, innovation, economic viability, all this sort of stuff. And as I've talked before about my role, since we take it from costing it to building it, you pretty much tick off all those things. I know the IMechE and the civil engineer one is slightly more structured, but we do have people going through the chartership with those as well. So that's the process. I think they're about to change it though, so you might have to do an interim report. But again, when you're working on these projects, you'll be able to blast those reports off easily. It really aligns. It's the best way of describing it.
Perfect. That's good. I'm glad we touched upon that, because I know it's something that, and again, when I'm speaking to students, it's something that really does interest them, and it is a bit of a drive for them, for the career and the future to be a chartered engineer. So that's great that we've touched upon that. Brian, when do you finish placement, Brian?
I finish on the 31st of August this year.
Oh, it sounds as though, to say that the pandemic world that we've been living in, that you've managed to achieve quite a lot in the kind of 7 months. 7 months have been able to support you a lot of the last 7 months doing your placement.
Yeah, I mean, being one of the good things about being in the water industry is that you will always be needed. You always need drinking water, and you will always need someone to take your wastewater away. So even during COVID, I've been able to work and learn and develop here. And just to add to what Max was saying about a chartership, even as a placement student, you can start your MPDS, your Monitored Professional Development Scheme.
Yeah. And
I've got a chartered mechanical engineer in my team, so it's just great to get tips off him. And a lot of engineers in Severn Trent are chartered, so we can always pull them over and be like, "Oh, can you help me with my quarterly report?" So it's really helpful. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. So what's your plan then? So when you do finish your placement in August, is the plan to come back to Severn Trent as a graduate? What are you thinking?
Yes, if Severn Trent will have me. My experience. Yeah. So, sorry?
This is where Darren goes, "Of course you can, Brian."
It's recorded, Brian, so if he says you can, you can go back.
Yeah. I just think my experience so far has been very positive, and like I said earlier, I think this year I've managed to get a lot of experience and knowledge that I wouldn't have been able to at university. I think I've learned about what engineering is like in industry, and how a large corporation such as Severn Trent approaches projects and the mechanisms it used to sort of manage and progress the projects. So I think I'd definitely like to come back to Severn Trent. Aaron.
I was just going to chip in there thinking, why the awkward silence then when Brian was asked that question? Justin alluded to it earlier, that there is some sort of resetting the dial, as it were, in terms of what the engineering programs look like at Severn Trent, with a view to 2022 being quite a big year for us.
Yeah.
So, and that is all about the kind of stuff that Max and Brian have been talking about, and that's making sure that we're setting people up for success, which is gaining the right technical skills and technical development, which leads towards that chartered status, rather than just having an engineering program that would go into water for 12 months and then waste for 12 months. It's kind of what are the technical skills that are being learned during that period as well.
Yeah.
So there's a number of senior people that are sort of looking at the redesign of that with a colleague of mine, and obviously be linking in the sort of academy and Justin's team as well.
Yeah. Just this is, I'm going to ask you a question, Darren. It's quite general. I understand now that you're changing. You're in a kind of state of change at the moment. But just for any of the audience and listening, as a recruiter, why do you see it as such a benefit to get placement students into your business?
I think it just provides organisations with that not so much try before you buy. It works both ways. So it enables an individual to experience that organisation. It can help, but I really hope that Severn Trent are in a position in the future where we are able to identify future graduates in fairly kind of, well, it's not big numbers, but you know, if we've got 10 of Brian in the business, then we should be able to offer 10 Brians a future role within the organisation as well. Yeah. You know, that's what an early identification scheme is there for. Now, there's some really interesting discussions to have internally as well. So there's an individual that spent a year with us in finance last year that's gone off to one of the big four. And I think it's, you know, just internally, what is that strategy for Severn Trent, right? And that's our conversation. But you know, that individual got a role at a really sort of, well, big four, right? They're all sort of very high profile organisations. That individual was given the development at Severn Trent that enabled them to be successful going into practice rather than actually sort of being in industry. Mm-hmm. And that should also be celebrated. So I think that as long as we are providing a challenging, rewarding experience that allows an individual to really kind of make the right informed decision that this is the route that I wish to take, then we're kind of we're being true to ourselves in terms of being a socially purposeful organisation as well, and providing equal opportunity for everyone. That's kind of the way that I would look at it.
Brilliant. Yeah, and I'm glad you touch upon that, because it is something which, again, I talk about a lot, and understanding why, you know, employers offer placements and how it can be a huge benefit to the individual, but also as the business. So it's good that we've touched upon that. Rose, can I quickly come to you just regarding, because I just want to make sure we've finished and spoke to everyone about obviously their future plans, and just want to kind of come to you and see what your future plan is, and where you can see yourself going with Severn Trent.
Yeah, sure. So I actually recently started a sponsored master's that Severn Trent is paying for, which is great of them, so thank you. So that's an MBA, so Masters in Business Administration, and to me that's it was sort of the perfect stepping stone at this point in my career, because had, as I said earlier, some brilliant internal training on leadership, but I think having come from a physics background and never even done, like, you know, business studies, GCSE or anything, it's quite a different world to me still. A lot of some of the business skills that I want to develop. So it's been really interesting so far doing this MBA, because you get to focus on things like how to set a strategy for the organisation, how to understand finance and numbers. You know, again, developing those leadership skills, and also building a network outside of the water industry, which I think is really helpful as well to learn from. So the next 18 months or so, 2 years, is really going to be focused on getting that completed. And, you know, that's evenings and weekends. So it's quite a big target. So I think that alone is probably my immediate objective for the next couple of years. And then once that's out the way, I'll start thinking about, okay, what is the right role to start applying those skills to? So I'm already taking advantage of them in my current job, but I think it's then, well, how do I really start to, you know, focus on a strategic role, or do something with a bit more of a financial focus to really start to practice those skills as well.
Brilliant, that sounds great.
Something else, oh sorry, I was just going to say quickly as well, I know we touched on Chartership earlier. I suppose it's worth knowing as well that Severn Trent does sponsor and support Chartership in other ways as well. So for example, at the end of this MBA, I'll also be a chartered manager, and I know in our procurement teams there's, you know, you can get Chartership that way. So yeah, there's a whole range of different Charterships that we support as an organisation.
Brilliant. Next, I'm going to quickly do key facts, if that's okay. And I know, Justin, you had an interesting one, and I think some others did too. So just want to quickly touch upon that. So Justin, what's your key interesting fact about Severn Trent?
So the one I'm going to share is we are taking on 500 Kickstart placements. Now, if you don't know what Kickstart is, this is a scheme to get 16 to 24-year-olds into work. And give them a 6-month placement, and hopefully at the end of it, get them better equipped to get a full-time job either with us or somewhere else. But we're taking on 500. Now, that is the second biggest number in the country. And talking to some of our colleagues across the water industry, they're proud of taking on 10 or 15. So massive commitment from us around our social purpose.
Amazing, brilliant. It just shows obviously the stance on Severn Trent, if they can take on that amount of people, shows how big and powerful they are within their markets. That's great. Anyone else on interesting fact?
Yeah, I'll share one with you.
Go on then, Darren.
This is a new one. We didn't discuss this one earlier. During the pandemic and working from home, staff being at home, there's a campaign that's been running recently called Raise a Smile. And that's a series of social activities that are virtual and online that are put on for members of staff and families. So a few weeks ago, probably about a month ago now, there was a comedy night. So with comedians going online, all free. So you just had a link sent to you and sort of settle down with your beer and snacks and kind of have a good laugh. A couple of weeks ago, there was a quiz evening, there was over 3,000 people that were online, sort of taking part in that quiz with prizes and iPads, etc., and sort of different rounds and winners, etc. And tonight, in fact, is bingo night. So yeah, so it's exciting stuff. So I'm not sure if there's going to be 3,000 people on that one, but my kids will certainly enjoy it. So we'll give it a go.
Oh, fab! I love a bit of bingo. Get me down to Scout the Beach.
But I think what the point is, it goes to show the commitment that Severn Trent has to its staff and look after them. Just little things like that can make a lot of difference at a time when it's been incredibly difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's awesome. It gives that family vibe, doesn't it? Getting everyone involved, feeling like a team.
Yeah.
And obviously, how big is Severn Trent? How many people are in the business in total? Sorry.
About 6,500 members of staff.
Wow.
So,
that's cool, isn't it?
I think we've definitely always got that family vibe from Severn Trent. When me and Jess have been there in the past, it's always, such a welcoming place to be. So yeah, and we really glad that you do those activities as well. What I really want to do now is, I'm torn because Rose, I really want to hear about your secondment. Are you okay to quickly just give us an overview of what that is? Because Max touched on it and Rose, and obviously you did before Rose as well. So can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, very quickly. So at Severn Trent, there's a company policy, which is after 5 years, you can take a sabbatical for up to 12 months and you're guaranteed a role at the same level when you come back. So I took advantage of that last year. Well, no, not 2020, 2019, luckily, I took advantage of that. And for 3 months of that time, I went to Nepal and led a team out there to set up a water network for 300 people in a rural village. So really interesting experience, and from a leadership perspective, completely different set of leadership skills needed. You're almost half teacher, half parent, half manager, so really different leadership experience, but really great to test some of our sort of water skills we've developed in a completely different environment and applying them in a different way. So yeah, it was really helpful, and obviously just an amazing experience to see the difference we could make to that community.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks very much, Rose, and thanks for touching on that at the end. So Darren, I'm going to finish with you. Any exciting plans that you can give us a sneaky peek to for Severn Trent in the future?
I think our programs will continue to grow, and I think they'll be fairly niche as well. It won't just be broad. So digital engineering is a good example of that. It's a new program. I think those that might be considering, well, I'm learning X at university, but might be looking, might want to do something else. There is, of course, level 6 apprenticeships that people could sort of go down that route if a graduate program was sort of something that they wanted to consider. So we've got farming liaison, agricultural advisors. So we'll go through real specialist kind of training with the University of Lincoln, project management, degree apprenticeships, quantity survey degree apprenticeships. And there's a real broad range of new talent that is here for 2021. I think that will grow in 2022 as well.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Darren, and thanks everybody today for joining us and giving us a really good insight into Severn Trent. And I hope you all the viewers now watching will understand that the water industry is such a fantastic industry to be in. It's changing all the time, and it offers you so many brilliant routes into like Chartership and everything else. So thank you guys for joining us today. Don't forget, like Darren and I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, the 3 graduate programs are still open to applications, closing on the 21st of March. So get your application in. Go on, Darren.
Just a quick shout out. One of the challenges that the water industry has is encouraging women into STEM careers. Yeah. Okay, so as a male, I'm saying this out to all the males, let's not take offense to that, right? So, but there is a job that needs to be done. I've got some very senior people joining me on Monday afternoon on a live webinar. I'll touch on it with yourself, Jess and Carla, afterwards. But there's Head of Bioresources, Leah Fry.
Yeah.
And there is also a lady by the name of Steph Corley, who is head of our water networks. And they're going to talk about the operational world. So in a very male-dominated sort of arena, then we want to kind of blow away some perceptions of what that environment might be. So in terms of that passive careers research, where you can hear from very senior people about what it's really like, then that's an easy win to do a little bit of research about us and to understand more about our culture. There we go, Glenn.
Thanks, Darren. And we'll put that the links to the webinar on the hub as well. So
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah,
I'll send a separate email to you.
Cool, thanks, Will, and we'll get those added. So join Darren next week. Next week for me, I am joined next Thursday by Centrica, the energy and service supplier. So Jess will be taking a break, Sophie will be with me, and we'll see you all same time, same place next Thursday. So thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
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 Bye. Bye.